to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our July 15th meeting. Please bear with us on our technology end of it. Hopefully everybody can hear what's being said and what's going on. If there's any issues, try to let us know by either raising your hand on the Zoom meeting or just somehow getting a message to us to let us know what's happening. I think at this point everybody's okay. They can hear what's going on and they can hear me. The first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes from our July 1st, 2020 Select Board meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve our minutes from the July 1st, 2020 meeting.
I'll second it.
Lee Gustafson's the motion and Jeff Holden is the second. Any changes, corrections, comments on those minutes? Everybody okay with them as written?
Yes.
All those in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. The minutes are approved. Next item on our agenda is citizens' comments. If there was someone here that would like to address the board regarding an issue that is not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Are there any citizens' comments? Anything from previous meetings on answers or questions?
The only thing is that Tim Roper had brought up concerns relative to flags on Main Street. Jeff and the Legion have gone down, taken down any of the flags that were torn and unraveled the ones that had gotten wrapped.
Thanks, Julie.
I'd like to comment to that.
Sure.
I've been up there several times in the last 2 weeks, straightening flags and trying to change the way they're hooked to the rods so they don't wrap up so much. And I've also done some research. I've gone to area towns that have the same type flag mast, and they all have the same problems. Our biggest problem is that the wind and the truck traffic flips them around pretty regular. And all I have to do is get caught on the sliver on the poles or whatever, and it's a pain to try to keep them straightened out. If they were newer, they probably wouldn't be such a big problem, but like I said last meeting, the Legion was going to purchase replace all the flags this year. However, when this COVID thing hit, that pretty much shut us down, so we were using last year's flags. Those flags wouldn't even been up there if it wasn't for the American Legion. It's something that we wanted to do, and there was a couple of people in town that donated. Bill Dakin's one of them, and actually Tom Knockenhauser was the other one that actually donated when we first originally put them up. I've been racking my brains trying to figure out how to make those things stay unwrapped, but as I've watched them, a truck going by or the wind coming from different directions, some of them are more protected from the wind than others. I don't know what else can be done to straighten them out. And I wish it hadn't come before the board. I think it should have been something everybody knows. They could have called me or somebody, a Legion member, that would have taken care of it. And this town hall wouldn't even have a flagpole out there if it wasn't for the American Legion donating one. And I just thought it was a bad light on the Legion. As much as they do, they donate. Last year I think it was between $40,000 and $42,000, along with running that facility, trying to keep it so that when veterans need to have memorials or whatever for their loved ones, or other functions for their families. We did the fireworks. The fireworks went off pretty good, and we had a lot of people comment, and they were appreciative that we did them. But I just think it was in poor taste. I mean, I would have gladly worked with somebody to try to fix it. But like I said, every other town has the same problem. I've seen a lot of the same flags on residences that have the same problem with the wind, and they tangle up. Unless there's a different problem that I was not made aware of, that they, because the comment was that they weren't displayed properly. I don't know what that means, other than them being wrapped up.
Thank you, Jeff. I don't think it was meant as a, you know, towards the Legion as a negative thing. I really don't. It was just a mention of the flags and the condition they were in, that's all.
Right, and
That's
he never gave me a definition of what he meant by displayed improperly.
Any other citizens' comments?
May I speak for a moment, please?
Surely.
Is it possible to pull your mics a little closer? It's very, very difficult. I hardly heard what Jeff was saying.
I'm pretty close. Lee. Can you hear me? This is,
I can hear you, and it looks like your mic is pretty far away, Jeff.
yeah.
Because of the echo, I pushed it back.
Okay.
Are you getting the echo now?
Maybe that's all.
Okay.
Bear with us, and if you can't hear us or something happens, let us know, and we'll try to correct it to make sure we get across.
Thank you.
Any other citizens' comments? Hearing none, we'll go on to old business. Julie, can you take us through our old business list?
Sure. Public safety building, the amendment A to the guaranteed maximum price has been sent to Jim for review. Once we have that back, I will bring that to the board. Probably will be a special meeting, hopefully sometime next week. Once we have that, construction can begin on the EMS building. The gate at the Pinnacle is up. The sign has been approved and is being constructed. That should be done probably the end of next week. And I've enclosed a copy of the wording in your packet that we had come up with for all the points, trying to keep it polite but firm for the Pinnacle. The police department, this I'm hoping to have as an agenda item in August as a follow-up to the last meeting when Rick was here with the new police department policies and procedures. I did give you the 2013 assessment that was done, because that was a topic of discussion at the last meeting. Just, it's heavy, there's a lot there, a lot of content. So that will give you ample time to review that before the next time we meet in August. And also we talked about the skate park. Jeff has been having some conversations with some young men in town, some boarders in town. The Buildings and General Services grant opened up a little early this year, and that is a grant that we often use for work at the recreation field and in different facilities down there. So it would be a good time to use that for improvements to the skate park. So I intend to find those gentlemen in town and hopefully get them involved in what they're looking for their skate park, and maybe get some vested interest in it, so it'll be taken better care of this time around. But as we start fine-tuning those details, there'll be more on that, because you'll need to approve that grant.
How long has that skate park been here? About 20 years, 15, 20?
Well, I had been here probably 14 or 15, because I think it was either my first or second year here that Steve worked on getting that put in. So it's been quite a long time. And nothing really much has been done to it, so it's due. It's due, and skateboarding is kind of a thing coming back around again, so, yeah.
The winters in Vermont are not easy on a skateboard park, I'm
No,
sure.
no.
And I see a lot, gets a lot of use.
It does.
Even with the condition it's in. There's always people down there, and there's always people enjoying themselves there, it seems.
Yeah. And Arnie, I inadvertently left COVID update off the agenda, so do you want me to cover that under old business, I
Yeah,
presume?
sure. Well, it'll be at the next item. Is that okay with the rest of the board to add that?
Yes.
And we usually have it every time.
We have it every time. I don't know why it got replaced on the agenda, but, first, I met with Bob Flint, Carol Lighthall the other day about some kind of down and dirty marketing things that we can do specific to Chester to maybe kind of push some tourism in our town, being mindful of where we're wanting to pull people from, so on and so forth. So we're working on some different strategies. I'll be talking to CEDC, hopefully in the next couple weeks, about some things that we're thinking we could use them for. But be prepared, because I will be coming the first meeting in August asking for some money from the Chester Development Fund. Kind of a one-time, what we want to do. We haven't worked out the details of what we want to do, but we want it to be quick, relevant for now, but not be a one-time shot. We want it to be something that can be built on, and kind of develop a 2-year plan for some things we can do to market the town during this particular time. Get my feedback. Also, the legislature approved funding of a grant program for municipalities to help recover some COVID expenses. As we've been expending things specific to COVID, Sil's put those in a separate line. So we should be able to grab those quickly as soon as that grant opens up. We, of course, will be applying for that to get reimbursed for anything that we have expended to date. So far, it's been about $4,500. We did have about $30,000 for the highway department payroll before we put them out on furlough. When we were alternating shifts, we drew from the sick bank for that. So I don't know that will be reimbursable, but we'll try. We'll see what the state comes up with. And then probably, go ahead. Probably what everybody's going to want to know about is we did, the press release was sent out Monday. We did have an individual at the pool last Thursday contacted me Sunday afternoon that they had in fact tested positive for COVID. Lots of things have transpired since then. Come to find out that after we talked to Department of Health, the contact tracing division, the child actually would not have been contagious on Thursday. She would not have been contagious until Friday because her exposure was on Thursday. We did still proceed with the hiring in the company to completely disinfect the pool house and the whole pool area, shut down Monday. I learned today, after speaking with her father again, that that was from a rapid results test. He went and had a regular test done, got the results back today, and he is in fact negative. So the children and the mother are also getting retested. So there is a likelihood that she was not COVID positive to begin with. So, but the pool is back open. Again, all the precautions that we had in place, we feel confident with. Pool is disinfected every 45 minutes, the pool house, I should say, not transferable in chlorinated water. So we're confident that we handled it the way we should have, and so.
Aren't they getting a lot of false positives on those rapid?
What I heard from the health department is on the rapid results tests, there is a 60 to 70% chance of a false positive. So they really are not a reliable test, certainly to be making determination as to whether or not, there's exposure. So this particular individual will be getting the rest of his family tested just because it affects a lot of things.
I have a question, if I may.
Go ahead, Lee.
It's my understanding that the only people who are going to be able to pool are Chester and Andover residents, and I also find also that this person was not from Chester or Andover, and I wonder, I'm just not sure how we know if people are from Chester and Andover.
So when
Pool rules are very, very specific, and I did notice that non-residents past have been able to purchase pass or seat pass, but that was marked out at the bottom. I'm confused with what do we do to know if someone's a Chester resident or an Andover resident, and how do they keep a list of people who come in to use the pool? pool, I noticed there's there. How do we screen? Or if we can screen, maybe that's the wrong word.
So when we first opened the pool at the beginning of the summer, we did to Chester and Andover residents and taxpayers only. When the governor opened up the state further, other pools in the area as well as Chester opened up to Vermont residents. So this individual was not a Chester resident, but they were a Vermont resident. And so we're allowed to come to the pool. Since
People sign up when they want to come and swim for that 45-minute period, so that we have contact information on people when they do come in and where they are and how we can contact them if we need to.
Yes. Yep. So I was going to continue by saying we have a sign-in sheet. We have a contact tracing form that we fill out with the name, their temperature checked. We have the series of questions that we ask about recent illnesses, so on and so forth, and phone numbers. So we were completely ready and able to give that information to the state and to contact people, but the state didn't want it because they weren't considered contagious until Friday. But yes, Lee, we have all those pieces in place. Now that we are back, we have reined things back in a little bit. We're doing only Chester Andover residents and taxpayers. So you will be required to provide either a Vermont driver's license showing that you're a Chester resident, or if you are an out-of-stater who owns a home here, you'll need to show proof that you own a home, so your tax bill, something along those lines.
So would it also be appropriate to drop us back down to 25 or 75 minutes versus 40?
We certainly can. That's something I can talk to Matt about.
Yeah, I would like to hear from Matt about that. I mean, the pool is big, but 40 people and the rules that are in place of no splashing and this, that, and the other thing. I'm just wondering if it's worth, if we have it a 45-minute block about from noon until the pool closes, we have to accommodate the numbers of people that want to swim.
We can certainly, I can talk to Matt about putting it back down to 25. When you have families in the pool, 25 is not a lot of people in that pool. That's what we found. When we had it at 25, we actually questioned if it was worth to even have the pool open at that point. Because, yeah, but I will talk to Matt. I can talk to Matt about that again if that's what the board wants me to do.
I would think that on the precautions that we take following the state guidelines are at least minimal. If we do want to take it further, then I would think that would be up to us. Now, as far as those testings that we were speaking of earlier, when you have like a 50 or a 60% false positive, you also have a 40 or 50% positive. That is right. So it's an early warning sign, and so it's still wise to heed when something like that happens and to follow through with all these precautions as opposed to taking a shot at it and saying, well, it could be a negative.
No, we would not take that risk.
We cannot do something like that. When an issue is presented to us and we were made aware of it, I think it's our responsibility to act on it and make sure that we act on it the right way and follow through. And I think you did a great job as far as putting out the press release and notifying the people involved, because a lot of times rumors get started in a town, and by the time it filters down through, the story has changed quite a bit. And keeping people informed and keeping things open and transparent are extremely important, I think, during these times. And I think what's going on there is you're doing a really good job with all that, the information and stuff. One question I did have regarding, what was the activity that was at the baseball field that night?
So,
The Little League field, not the Green Mountain, because Green Mountain's really not.
oh, okay, so you're talking about the Little League field.
Yeah,
So,
because that was that Thursday night that I think that.
correct. So, the governor opened up team versus team sport, games, baseball games, no tournaments, but one game against the other. So, there were two teams playing, neither one of them were Chester teams. What they do with these...
Neither one of them were?
No. So what they do with the Little League teams is they rotate different fields, okay? So there is often times that on our field, there'll be two other teams playing. We may be playing on Springfield. It's just how the rotation with so many teams goes. And there are some towns that don't have adequate fields. So this is a mutual thing that we've done for years. So the two teams playing were not Chester teams.
Wow.
Yeah.
I understand the procedure, but boy, in these times, that doesn't seem like a wise thing to do. Two teams playing each other that aren't even from our town. And I understand it's Little League related and there's some kind of agreement that they have and stuff, but boy, I think they would look at that policy or procedure to see if there's a way to make it so that if you're going to have a couple of teams playing, that at least one is from the town that you're in.
So they don't use the dugouts, and they don't use our equipment. So I'm not sure what the exposure would be.
Yeah.
And they're not allowed to use the bleachers.
There were a lot of folks.
Are there the rules posted? I know that's private property, and maybe that doesn't come under our purview. But I also understand that there were many.
Lee, I
two different things.
think you might be confusing this one. We're speaking of the Little League field next to the town pool. That was Thursday night. I think you're speaking towards the Green Mountain
Yeah.
ball field over Mackenzie Field, where the
Mackenzie Field.
but you know, same thing there. I mean, if people are going to have tournaments and they're going to be involved in our town, I would hope that they would have the courtesy to follow the CDC regulations about masks, about distancing, and everything else. Because what I fear is that if we loosen up or if we just start taking things for granted, it's gonna come back to us. It's, you know, when I look at what's going around in the country right now, it's in shambles. We're sheltered here, and we have a little bit of a buffer zone because social distancing seems like it comes pretty natural in Vermont. But it wouldn't take much for things to light up in Vermont also, and back to right where we were after all the hard work and suffering, not suffering, but sacrifice that we had to get to this point. I would hate to see it all lost.
Arnie,
Yes, Heather.
can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. Or we can.
Okay, I just like, I'm hearing a lot of echoing, so just bear with me. First of all, Julie, about the grant program, maybe we can add the cleaning of the pool to that?
Yep.
And keep track of what we're spending. The other thing is, my understanding is that the COVID-19, that there's 35 or so people who are positive from Manchester kind of up towards Londonderry and maybe here. And I just want to say that I agree wholeheartedly with Arnie. And, you know, Manchester has enacted a mask ordinance or mandate or whatever. And I just think that we really have to be careful. We may want to think about that. And I think we're all role models, and we should be practicing, you know, social distancing and wearing masks as much as we can. Because like Arnie said, we're on a tinderbox, and if we can prevent one death or one person from the horrific suffering that occurs, that would be well worth it. And that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Anything else on that?
It's hard to see.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions or concerns regarding the COVID update or COVID in general? Boy, that sun feels great.
It does.
Well, I'm sure you've all seen it too. There's the media or whatever, but there's thousands of doctors in this country that say that wearing masks too much may not be healthy. That's all I want to say. And I think we should be careful about taking away people's rights and enforcing ordinances for businesses. I think everybody in this country has been exposed to this, as responsible adults, they need to make up their own minds. And if you're not comfortable going into the store because somebody's not wearing a mask, don't go in the store. That's your choice. But you shouldn't, if the store chooses to put that, they want people wearing their mask, that's their private property, that's their choice. So if you're not willing to wear a mask going into the store, then that's your choice. Don't go in. I just think.
I just want to add one more thing.
Hold, hang it, Heather, hang in there.
Sorry. Okay,
I'm sorry, we'll get to you, Heather. Go ahead, Jeff, you want to finish?
No, that's fine, let Heather go.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Heather.
Sorry, it's hard. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jeff. I read something today that said that we could have no COVID-19 in this country if we wore masks in public for 60 days. So I think we need to look at the research, and I think we need to look at medical, scientific authorities on this issue.
Well, I agree, but I've seen a study, as the field I work in, the water and wastewater, confined spaces, the OSHA regulations, we have to put a gas meter in confined spaces before entry. The meter will alarm when the oxygen level is below, or hits and goes below 19.5% oxygen. And it has been shown and tested many times that when you're talking, they put the meter, the probe next to the subject's mouth, and they were talking, breathing normal air is fine. Within about 10 to 15, maybe 20 seconds after they put a mask on with that probe in the same place, the meter alarms, and the oxygen level dropped in that particular test down to 17.5% oxygen. Now, if we were in a confined space with that kind of level of oxygen, OSHA would give us a fine, $10,000 fine, in fact. So I think it's a matter of personal choice. And everybody knows if you wear a mask constantly, working outside or whatever, you're more fatigued and liable to come home with headaches if you're wearing them constantly. I have no problem with putting the information out there, but I think people need to make their own decisions.
Well, people making their own decisions doesn't seem like it's working out too well in this country. The new cases yesterday, or the day before, I think United Kingdom had 516, Germany 298, Italy 208, Australia 137, Sweden 57, Denmark 47, Norway 11, and the U.S. comes in at 57,219. And more than a few doctors in the CDC have said that masks are a surefire way to definitely cut the transmission of cases and the disease from spreading as much as it does. And I agree with you about personal rights, but your personal right ends when you put other people in danger. And I think that's where we have to become a little more of a caring society or a caring town to worry about our fellow person as opposed to our personal rights.
I'd like to ask that we move on, please.
Sure. Well, any more questions or comments on the COVID-19? Next item on our agenda is financial review. We have our 6-month numbers in front of us. It's a new accrual system, so it looks a little different than it has been. It's a little clearer to understand, it seems. And Julie, can you just take us through this? It seems like we're trending down in expenses when it comes to our budget. It seems like we've spent about 40% of our overall budget compared in a 6-month period.
Yep, our department heads are doing phenomenal with trying to do really necessary purchases only. Just being mindful of the cash flow for the first 6 months, not knowing what we were going to run into. Everybody was being extremely careful. And they have been. We're expended about 42%, so we're about 8% under where we should be, which is good, a couple $100,000. less than what is budgeted, so.
Any questions or concerns on the budget itself from any board members? Julie, I had one on public safety income, the state aid. We had budgeted 100,000, or we budgeted 195,000, I believe.
Okay. For revenue, you mean? I'm sorry, revenue.
So
Yep.
is that state aid?
That's the state aid that we get. We get
So
quarterly payments. We
Oh,
get
it's
four.
quarterly
We
payments.
get four
That's why it's
payments.
like that. I thought it was a one-time payment, and it was way
No,
over like that.
we get quarterly payments.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions regarding the budget from any board members?
I have none.
Would you like to go through it at all, or is everybody happy with the budget as it's been presented and shown on the sheets and stuff, or? It seems like it's all trending in the right direction, and I know there's some big expenses coming up, and we have put off some of the payments for some of the bigger ticket items until our cash flow improves a little, because the tax bills are going out.
Tax bills have gone out.
They're going
They have
out.
gone out.
Yes, Heather?
I'd like to just say that I appreciate Julie and the department heads keeping the budget, or keeping the spending down in light of what we're facing. And that's all. Sorry.
That's fine, Heather. It's okay.
I think, it's just a good point. We're doing it to keep, so we don't have to borrow more on the tan note. But there are things that will have to be purchased before the end of the year.
Correct. Yep. Yep. Yeah, please don't assume that we're going to end the year with
80%.
excelling at this. Department heads have held off purchases until we could get some cash flow, so we didn't have to extend and borrow more on the TAN. And we did very well. We did not draw 100% of our TAN. And tax bills are out and revenue is coming in, and Ron's looking at me. Go ahead.
But there's other parts that are down in there too. I mean, some of the overtime is down.
There are, yes.
A lot of the maintenance stuff that would come up that you would do anyways.
There are some
down.
things that you'll see. We should, unless there's a problem, we should come in under, yes. Because there are some expenses we were able to cut this year that we won't have to spend, but for this year.
All right.
It doesn't.
It's Heather again.
Go ahead, Heather.
I think it's really prudent to do what we've done, though, especially in light of, we don't know how many people are going to have tax delinquencies. I think after September 15th, we'll have a really big picture of what's happening in that department.
Yes.
Thanks, Heather. Any other questions or comments regarding the budget?
So at what point do you want Ron to do your balance sheet training?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's our next discussion.
Yes.
Ron Smith is here. He's from our auditing firm, and he's here to give us a hand to understand our balance sheet, how it works, and what we should be looking for when we first look at something like this. I mean, it's new to all of us here, and I know we did switch from a cash basis to accrual, and that was a big change in general, and I think it gives us a better picture of what's going on, because even though we might not pay these bills out, we know that we have them. Before, it always seemed like a skewed picture, because if you didn't pay the bill out, it wasn't really listed there yet until you did. And the same thing coming in. Now, money owed to us, it's shown here too like that. So when someone picks up a balance sheet like this that's been provided to us, what should we be looking at? What's like, how would you look at it with your fresh eyes?
Well, I think based on this conversation you just had, you asked a lot of the right questions for sure. But a balance sheet, certainly to be useful, needs the other half, and that's your budget report, your revenues and expenses. You can't look at one without looking at the other. So I'd start there. And I think that in my eyes, and doing this for 30 years, I'd actually start with the revenue and expense report with the budget, because I think that really tells you a story, of what you're doing, how you're doing, and and I heard a lot of things, and I see some things that Heather was talking about that Julie and the department heads were doing as far as curbing spending, et cetera, which brings you in about 50%, during the course of the year. I mean, those are all good conversation pieces to have to lead into the balance sheet, which is a presentation of your financial condition as of a point in time. This one happens to be a great point in time because it's halfway through the year. So it's almost like a report card of where you are halfway through the year. And just looking at this surfacely, a couple of things, and Julie, answered them. One, you've got a cash flow problem. That's pretty clear, and it's been mitigated by your tax anticipation note. And it sounds like you haven't used all of your tax anticipation note, which is great. And just so I'm clear, how much is your tax anticipation note and how much haven't you used, Julie?
So the tax anticipation note this year was $750,
Yep.
and I think we have about $240 left.
Yeah.
We have about $240 that we have not.
So, because clearly that's able to mitigate your peaks and valleys, of your money that you have or don't have during the course of the year. And your taxes, obviously, it sounds like your tax bills just went out. So I would expect within 30 days, that you're going to start seeing, the north trend, in your checking account as opposed to what I'm looking at here. And that's really what the purpose of a balance sheet is to show you at a picture and point in time, show you a picture as of a point in time of what you own and what you owe. And the two things you really want to focus on is how much money really is sitting in the bank and really what all your obligations are, out there. And if you guys are sitting on a pile of bills, there, I'd probably be a little bit more concerned, because maybe you're using those vendors or those bills to float your cash flow, but I don't see any of that here. I see you guys, are pretty consistent with where you were before. Your cash position's down a little bit, but this really tells a story. Here's what I'll be really interested in seeing is this thing 1 year from now, because I think it's going to look totally different just in doing this for 30 years and just in seeing some of the struggles out there that the world of government's having right now. I think that a couple of things there. I think you've got the perfect year end on December 31st as opposed to June 30th, where you had town meetings that happened historically in Vermont on March 31st. Well, if you're a June year end, a lot of this madness isn't going to get settled until probably the latter half of the first part of your year, which is the next year, based on what just ended on June 30th. And that's where we're seeing a lot of problems there and we had a discussion before, people are going to go back to school. I'm not sure when they're going to go back to school. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. It's all speculation at this point. Okay, so how much money we're going to get reimbursed for all this madness? What else is going to come down the pipeline? How many more times you're going to have to sanitize your pool, this town office, etc.? There's so many things that we don't know. And for those people that are experiencing a lot of those things, with this madness, from March 15th this to June 30th, well, that's going to carry well into the next fiscal year. And I think by having a December year end, a lot of that dust will settle, at the end of the year for you guys. I really do believe that. But I think your December 2021 budget's going to be tough. I think that you put a 2020 budget together based on non-madness. So I'm interested. I've already heard you say you furloughed people, so I think that's obviously being invested, certainly and prudent, in how you're managing your affairs. But clearly, this really takes that picture and really puts it all into context. And like I say, just looking at this thing, the things that stand out to me is I'm glad your taxes are going to be coming in here pretty soon. We still got some money left over on the TAN right now. That's good. I don't expect you running out of money, but I'd be really interested in seeing this thing, come probably November or December and this time next year. Why? I'm interested in if people are going to be paying their taxes, because I just see bad things happening, out there. There's a lot of small businesses that aren't in business anymore, that were in business, 5 months ago. Yeah. So having tax sale property, the state of Vermont's going to have to look hard in the mirror, just like every other state, with outstanding property taxes. And I think that they're really going to have to be lenient, and I think that they're going to have to, have some kind of flexibility. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of small business owners and a lot of resident owners, that are going to be in a world of hurt. So we're certainly, the word unprecedented times, I don't think that, it can be used too much, because that's what we're in. But I do see a lot of challenges, and by the fact that you guys are getting this information every month, I think that that is just very helpful to allow you to make good business decisions. So, and that's the purpose of a balance sheet, it's really to tell that story as of a point in time. So,
One thing I'm kind of concerned about is with this COVID thing, property's been going crazy. There's a lot of out-of-state people have been buying property sight unseen. So when this settles out, are they going to still want to keep the properties? Are they going to be paying their taxes, or?
well, I hope they keep paying their taxes for sure. And what we're seeing out there, I'm born and raised in Vermont. I own property in Vermont. I own property in Maine. Let me just tell you this, I haven't seen the real estate market. If this madness is affecting the real estate market, we're not seeing it. But that's the real estate market about buying property. How about the people trying to stay in their homes, and to be able to afford the homes and the property taxes? And at some point in time, the unemployment's not going to be there. This bonus of $600 a week, that's going to run out. There's going to be some struggles later on. And that's why I say, at that point in time, October, November, I'm really interested to see what this is. And my advice to you all as a board is, as you look at this in July, as you look at this in August and September, really pay close attention to the comparative column that I think you just hit it out of the park by putting that in there, so you can see the trends. Are people paying their property taxes? And I think over the next, they're due what, August 1st?
September 15th.
September 15th. So September and October, pay real close attention, to this, because that'll really kind of dictate how the rest of your year is going to play out. And really, I think some of the decisions you're probably going to be faced with as a board, for sure. So.
Yeah, the real estate market in Chester, and I guess in the surrounding towns,
Yeah.
From anecdotal stories that I've heard, the houses are selling at price,
I'll tell you,
if not more,
I haven't seen
sight unseen.
If this madness is affecting the property values and people, I haven't seen it. I have not seen it, at all. But I think that's just one, piece of the matter. I think that, and that's certainly a subject of conversation. There's a lot more to the story, and that's the fact that people got to make a living. There's a lot of small businesses that aren't in business anymore. Some of those were taxpayers. I don't know how many you have on your property rolls. I'll be driving down your Main Street for sure here in about, as soon as this meeting's over. So I'm interested in, there's any empty spaces down there, that wouldn't necessarily have been empty, during all this madness, because I can tell you this, a lot of the places that I've driven through coming from Maine and in Vermont, and I spent the last 3 weeks, on a lake in Vermont, there's some empty stores, there for sure. There are places that were there a year ago that aren't there now. And that's telling me that two things. One, that's certainly going to affect your property. That's certainly going to affect property, taxes. On a lot of these, and thank God you're not one of them, and I just don't know what your per capita is, but thank God you're not a restaurant-driven, hotel-driven community, because I'll tell you, that's where we're seeing the property values. A lot of people for sale, those things are going to be for sale for a long time. Houses, not so much, that I've seen, out there with the conversations that I've had, in Burlington and South Burlington and Maine, that the property values, we're not seeing that. We're seeing the struggles of the people, the common household owner, and I think that those are the struggles you'll see later on this fall when some of this, stimulus and unemployment, when that runs out. That's going to be another whole wave, of conversation, I feel. And I feel that you're going to put a budget together in 2021, and we're still not going to be much closer to, what this madness has done to this country. We haven't even really seen the stimulus 3 and 4, that they keep saying, and that certainly is going to affect, who you are and what you do in the world of government. So
It seems like the small business owners, and like you said, the tourism part, the restaurants, so those are the ones that are getting hit hardest and stuff. And when I look at the packages that the federal government has put out and where the money has gone, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's always on the top end of things, it's always on the heavy end of things on that side, whereas the folks at the bottom are on the small business scale. don't seem like they're getting their share of the resources that are out there. It just, because the packages that were put together, and if you go down a list and you take a look at
Yeah.
who received money, and you're saying, why would they even get money?
And that's another whole level of questions, which is why I think that there really needs to be some caution to the wind with stimulus package number 3 and number 4. But I'm going to tell you, government has taken a beating, infrastructure has taken a beating through all this madness. They were quick to try to rescue the small businesses. I'm not sure how well they succeeded there. I think that it certainly helped, but at some point in time, there's going to be a recovery period, and we haven't seen that recovery period yet. And I think that that's really when the information, that's out there, as that starts becoming available, that's really going to drive a lot of decisions you make sitting here in your guys' chairs for sure. So I really do.
So what happens like with the scenario in September or October when our tax revenue falls short, low, and the delinquencies are a lot higher than they used to be? We turn around and we have to make a budget up for the next year. I mean, you have to seriously start looking at where do you cut? Where do you go to make sure that you can afford things?
I think in order to do that, before you can have a cut, how do you survive? Let's talk about survival first before you cut anything, because you're already knee deep into your budget. You've already got a past budget, and business carries on. So what do you put in place? And I think having things like tax anticipation notes and things like that, those are the vehicles to put in place to allow you time to make your business decisions. But here's what I'm sure of. There's going to be a run on the banks here sometime this fall, and we're already seeing that. So if you, and that's why it was great to hear that you haven't touched all that tax anticipation note. We've got communities out right now going out for permanent financing for tax anticipation notes for fear of next January, February, March, when we start turning the corner, of this madness, and the projections, are coming back in and they're trying to open the doors, the money's not going to be there. So to allow them some time to develop and build a plan, they're going out and putting super RANs and super TANs in place, that aren't going to be payable in 1 year. Why? To get them through, to get them through to weather the storm, and this isn't a storm, this is probably worse than that, it's a typhoon. But it's ugly. And I think that, what you do in October and November is put yourself in a position, hopefully you still have your TAN paid off, and if not, I would probably certainly think about some other alternative methods of financing to allow you time as the information gets presented to you, as the state has a workout plan, as the federal government has. Well, who's got a workout plan? The federal government doesn't even have one right now, so how can the state have a workout plan? So it's crazy, it's mad. I think that quite frankly it's trickled down, and guess what? This is usually right here where we're sitting, the last place that it trickles down to. So my advice to you is manage what you can here internally at the town of Chester, and do not depend on Big Brother State of Vermont and Big Brother Federal Government. Control what you can here, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that statement about trickle down, that never happens.
Yep, so.
By the time it gets down to the bottom there's nothing trickling down because it's been taken off at the top.
I don't know how much this state got. I actually saw the statistic.
1.25 billion or something?
Yeah, so, and I saw the statistic of what was, being considered for like education, curbside spending and, and things like that. $1 billion doesn't get you very much, especially in the state of Vermont. There's only so much of that money to go down, and when you look at infrastructure and I see millions of dollars worth of projects getting deferred, just because other business needed to come first and, and for other many reasons, everybody's looking in the mirror around, no exception, I'm sure, here to Chester. It's just good that you've got this information, and by having a balance sheet with the complement of the revenue and expense report with a budget is just going to allow you guys to make some better informed business decisions. But I really think that it's going to be this fall when you're going to start to see them, for sure. So.
Did anybody have questions about how to physically read this, like what all these numbers mean? I know there were some questions about that.
Which one,
Arnie?
you're looking at the balance sheet?
Yeah, Arnie, Bill Lindsay had a question. Arnie?
I heard due to, due from was a question that somebody had, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you about what that is.
Why don't you do that, Ron?
So due to, due from, so that's an internal feature that your software has, and we actually talked about it 3 years ago, which is why you moved to a better, more sophisticated software. So look at do from as a pool. You talked about your pool here tonight, and that pool consists of all of the business that you have here in the town of Chester. So you've got a water fund, you've got a sewer fund, you've got grants, you've got reserves. All that money is pooled with the exception, of some of your library trust funds and your like a community development fund that you have. You've got some pockets of money that are segregated and sitting in an account. This money's pooled like traditional government does, and the money's used to pay for all of the sources. And your system keeps track of it. And what this is telling me is that you've got pools of money sitting in water, pools of money sitting in sewer, and that your general fund has used $647,000 of all of those funds' money to reimburse it back later on, as time, goes on.
And then the next, when we look at this, after the, like if Sil were to run this today, and we've sent out bills, that number would be very different, wouldn't it?
No, absolutely.
Right.
When your money starts coming in from your general fund, basically that's how it all gets redispersed. Problem is you don't have any money in your general fund to disperse, which is why that number is historically $650,000 to $800,000 probably for the past 3 years.
So so this number is probably beginning January 1st until we send out tax bills every year, this shows as a negative number.
It's somewhere it'll get closer to zero. It's probably in January or February, but the further away you go from the end of your fiscal year, and it's not far, January or February,
right.
That number is going to get bigger and bigger. And it's probably right about now, to September 15th at its peak, is the best way I can say it.
It seems a lot better than last year.
Absolutely. And listen, you use that money to survive on. A lot of states, including Vermont, they've lifted restrictions, on allowing you, to use other money that may very well have been restricted, to survive, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
So I think that, you didn't have this business as usual in Chester. You didn't need any lift of restrictions, and the number actually has dropped by about $150,000. So, and that can be pooled because if my memory serves me, you were finishing up a capital project. I mean, and that's another nice thing about this balance sheet, just looking at this thing, as you just pointed out, the numbers dropped by 150,000. You can actually go in, look at that story and say, oh, what's this story? What chapter makes this story up? And we could tell you probably exactly where and why, for sure, on that $150,000 where that was saved. You couldn't do that 4 years ago with the software that you had easily. It was a nightmare.
We had 20 checking accounts.
You
So
had
if you
more
did
than 20
anything,
at one
you didn't
time.
know where it was going.
It was ugly. So,
I think Bill Lindsay had a question, Ernie.
Bill? Oh, I'm sorry.
I got a copy of the sheet today. There's a category here under the fund balance. And the fund balance for June of 2019 was $270,000. Now the fund balance now for current year is down to $26,000. Now, how does that change? What goes into that to change?
just so I'm clear, I'm looking at a number that says 270, and I'm looking at another number that says 56.
Correct.
Is that the one?
What line is that?
So, second page,
Yep.
Virtually third account from the top.
Okay. The fund balance on
Oh,
reserve?
right there, okay.
Yeah. So what that number is, it's just it's a running total, of what your fund balance is, and that's just one piece of your fund balance, because when I look, and I would expect exactly, your total fund balance is actually in the hole on June 30th, 2020, and I'd expect that because you've got no money.
We haven't
coming
billed
in,
yet, right.
Right now.
Right.
Yeah. But that tells me still, and there's probably not, there's probably some connection to this, too. That $270,000 and $56,000, I just don't know what makes that up. I don't know what restrictions you had at town meeting, that may have said, we're gonna use the money for this purpose or that purpose, and I just don't know, but what I would say is, it's pretty clear to me that you have used some of that, money to survive, is the best way I can say it.
That's really my question.
Yeah.
That that was a substantial drop in that figure, 233,000.
Yeah.
And what was that money used for in the change of the year? I mean, the budget was set, money was appropriated from the budget to run the general fund. And with the mixing of the various funds to establish a fund balance, we use that fund balance,
Yeah.
as I understand, to pay current bills. And I understand the reasoning, it says,
I would argue you use that fund balance and another $1 million to pay for current bills. You use that fund balance, and I'll raise it another probably $1 million-ish to pay for other bills. Why? Because you had no tax money coming in from January 1st until September 5th. So you're living on, hence this reserve
I
policy.
understand that, but I'm taking a tax anticipation though, to help fund the
Yeah,
fund balance.
but that has nothing to do with equity. Tax anticipation is just nothing but a boring obligation and a tool to mitigate your peaks and valleys of cash flow. It has nothing to do with fund balance or equity. So your equity, just like any other government would be, especially halfway through the end of your fiscal year, prior to you guys collecting any taxes, you're in the hole for many reasons. You know, and then the big reason is your tax bills aren't going to be due until September 15th. So I'm assuming there's a commitment that's about to hit here. And as soon as that commitment hits with those tax bills, you're going to see that thing go north of, and I have no idea what your tax commitment's going to be, but that's going to be a bigger positive number now. But right now, you're in a hole in typical governments with December year ends until their tax money comes in, until that tax commitment actually hits your books, are in the same position.
Well, what would explain the big difference in that, between that year and this year? I mean, that's
Just the way you're spending money.
depending on what bills were due, and
Yeah.
big ticket item might have been earlier this year and later this year.
So again, you know, I'm just thinking out loud, and that's why I say you really can't look at this piece of paper without looking at the other one. The real story is on your revenue and expense report with your budget. That tells you your story, you know, right there because anything that hits this,
It's explained in
hits
there.
this. You know, so you really need to take a look at this thing here right now, and I haven't, you know, studied this thing. I just had it put in front of me, you know, here tonight.
Well,
But
these are
this
just-
is really your story, you know, here right now, you know, as far as where your collections, you know, are. And, you know, in some collections I see up, some collections I see down. You know, I see tax penalties and interest, you know, halfway through a year, $80,000 you budgeted for, you're at 11, you were at 22. That's a piece of this story. You know, that's a piece of the story. You know, maybe people are going to pay their tax bills later this year because of all this madness. And that's why I say, really the story, I think that you want to look at this thing probably somewhere in September 15th, October, you know, ish, you know, is really, you know, when you really want to look at this revenue and expense report to your budget, and that really drives what's on your balance sheet, so. But if you're asking me, am I concerned that you have negative equity right now? No, I'm not concerned, because your tax commitment hasn't hit this thing yet. But when your tax commitment hits this thing, and in October, November, for some reason, whatever reason, you've got negative equity because you're one of the communities that had to spend $700,000 in COVID expenses and hasn't been reimbursed by the state yet, then there's probably many more chapters of that story to have that conversation. But it doesn't sound like you're going to be one of those communities, so.
So that fund balance changes depending on
By
what
the
goes
day.
on the detail.
Changes by the day.
There might have been a big ticket item that we had to pay for,
Sure.
or the bill came in later. This year was early, that year was later, and that changes the whole number, big
Absolutely.
time too.
Absolutely. So that number changes by the day, and the fact that you're in a negative situation now is zero concern to me, because I would expect that for you and any other June 30th government. Why? Tax bills haven't been paid.
It wasn't the fact that it was negative, it was the
Commitment.
fact that it was such a big difference between year to year.
Yeah.
But that's all, could easily be explained by, you know, one or two expenses that might pop up.
Well, and we've
or-
spent significantly less this year. I mean, we've only spent 42% of our budget.
You're actually like, your cash position, you know, is and that's why I say don't not necessarily equate equity with what's sitting up in your checkbook. Your cash position's a little off from where it was by about $50,000. You know, I'm more, your line of credit is literally right where it pretty well was at the year before. And your equity position isn't worse than it was the year before either. So, I mean, these are all indications to say, I wouldn't be concerned if I'm the town adjuster. If I'm concerned, I reserve the right to say that in October-ish, November-ish, sitting at this table. But right now, I really see nothing, that's jumping out at me except some low property tax collections and, which is typical because of the madness and other things. And the fact that you may have had, as you said, big ticket items that you had this year, as compared to last year, I think that's all explainable. So.
We did put off some purchases, I believe, some bigger ticket items till once our cash flow improves.
Yeah.
But those are items that we voted to purchase, and we're gonna, but we just tried putting it off until we
we had
didn't
cash
have to
flow.
hit the TAN note as much as.
And I would continue to do the same thing for another 45 days. by the
Yep,
sounds of
yeah,
things.
until we have significant revenue,
Right,
just
you-
because tax bills have gone out does not mean we're gonna start spending.
Yeah.
We're putting things off as long as we can.
Even though there's an expectation that people are going to pay, the real question is going to be when. When. That's the question. And like I said, that's the value of a balance sheet. That's the value, of this piece of paper to answer questions that you ask, to kind of explain the peaks and valleys and fluctuations, of your financial position.
Still one more question for you.
Sure, Bill.
On the liability side, it shows the deferred revenues.
Yeah.
What does that consist of?
So that's property taxes. So at the end of last year, December 31st, 2019, we take your tax commitment, what's owed for outstanding property taxes, and we have a standard that basically says you can only recognize 60 days so from January 1st to February 28th, all those people that paid in 60 days. Other than that, we have to defer whatever's owed. So we actually take that away from you, and there's somebody that wrote a standard about 30 years ago that basically says, even though they're going to pay it, why? Because there's a statute, out there that says they have to pay it and you can sell their property. Even though they're going to pay it, it's when they pay it. And that's why we say we don't recognize that all as revenue. Why? Because they don't pay, necessarily either on time or as necessary as it is, they should pay.
Any other questions or comments from any of the board members or anyone else regarding our balance sheet, our numbers? It seems like what you were saying about once our tax bills go out and the revenues start coming in, September or October are going to be telling times to see where we're going to be sitting.
There's a lot of people crossing their fingers right now. And if you're a June year end, I think it's going to be February, March, of the next year, is what I'd really be paying close attention to.
Well, and we are doing, the way we pay, and I've talked to Ron about this already, the way that we pay the school is going to be a little bit different this year. We're going to take we're not going to true up with them at the end of December. Like we normally do, we're not required to by law.
We have to pay them by June 30th?
By June 30th. So we're going to stretch ourselves out a little bit longer. The school knows that. I've had that conversation with them. We're going to kind of pay them what we've collected each month.
And we do a lot of schools in the state of Vermont. I'm going to tell you, that's a big conversation piece, and there's a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to funding of schools and how the cost of education is going to be paid for, et cetera. And there's a lot of uncertainty for sure.
Yeah.
Well, if we adopt that payment where we're doing it as we collect it, they're going to have to come up with cash in the form of a TAN note or whatever else.
Your state got $1.something billion, and it's obligated probably a pretty good piece of that
To the education
system.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, even if it's $500 million, that's not going to last very long, when you start spreading it out. And then how do you? What's the mechanism to do that? I know the business managers got together last Friday and there was some conversation with the state. I'll spend $500 million right now. It's gone. So the question is, who's going to get it? How much are they going to get? And I really think that a lot of those things still are uncertain, which is why when you start seeing stimulus package number 3 and stimulus package number 4, because they're going to be one, and it's probably going to be later on this fall, that's really going to drive a lot of your conversations that you're going to have later on this year. I'm sure of that. This rodeo I've been to before, and this one's just 10 times uglier, financially.
Is there a happy ending?
There's never a happy ending, There really is never a happy
Somebody's going
ending.
to pay for it in the end.
Well, I know who pays for it at the end. We do.
Yeah. So I hope we get something. I hope that my advice to you is live within your means, and hearing this conversation tonight, I am just glad to hear this conversation, so. Control what you can hear.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of it is out of our hands.
Yeah, and we have been tracking, and I will continue to do this. I am tracking weekly our collections of delinquent taxes, delinquent water sewer, so we can see if things start to fall. So far, they're holding. We did put the letter out when the state talked about not putting out education rates until the end of August. We had sent a letter out asking people that were able to prepay. And a lot of people did, actually, which was very helpful, and I'm sure that's referenced here too. But that was actually very helpful. We had a number of people that did do that, so it was something.
It's all hands on deck right now.
Yeah,
State,
something.
local government, schools, all hands on deck.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it has to be that way.
So when I start seeing too much of a shift, like what point do I need to start, like in August, do I need to be concerned, or do I need to start waiting until like September
So a
15th
couple
to
of
that
things.
due
When I
date?
first look at this, I would have said, I would have flipped the hourglass over now until you told me how much you had left of your tan. I would probably say, Julie, somewhere probably on around September 1st, September 15th.
Okay.
That's going to be a good barometer of what the next
Okay.
60 days is going to hold. I really
Okay.
believe that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Any board members? Any concerns? Any other comments?
This is Heather, and thank you so much for coming. It's always educational, and I appreciate your perspective.
Hi, Heather.
Ron, you're going to be involved with our next item on our
I gotta
agenda
go.
anyway, so don't leave your seat yet. Stick around. So last town meeting, we adopted a reserve fund with a condition of working out the details as far as how we're going to fund it and how we're going to spend it. So we basically got halfway there, and we're looking for some guidance on how to complete it, how to come up with a policy that the voters would stand behind and be happy with, and something that would work for the town as far as having it. I mean, it's been an objective of ours over the years, but we never really knew exactly how to do it. We've gotten part of the way there. We've established the policy, but now we're looking for guidance on the funding of it. Is usually, I mean, most of it was from tax surpluses at the end of the year.
Yep.
But the expending part of it also was a big question that came up, and the guidelines that would work to cover that in the policy. So I guess it's up to the board now to come up with a policy regarding how to.
Yes, and talk into your mic, because they're having a hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yes, the voters approved the establishing of a reserve fund.
Is this it?
This is what was presented. This is what was presented, Ron, yes.
Yeah.
Well, the article is what was presented, but this is the policy the board was looking at the time. So they approved setting up a reserve fund, but they did not approve any of the details around it, such as how much it can be funded, and how the inner workings and the detail. So there was quite a bit of discussion at town meeting about that. There were a lot of concerns about the threshold of 20% of the town's annual budget. There were many people that expressed concerns that was too high. And then there was a lot of concerns expressed too about how the money could be spent. I think there was a concern that the town would just kind of go willy-nilly and just randomly decide to buy things. We kind of put it on hold and said, fine, they approved the reserve fund, but we were going to come back in 2020 with the details, but we just never got to that. But you guys had decided to come back to it a couple months ago when all of a sudden we are putting $96,000 of unbudgeted money into Palmer Bridge. So case in point, why you need a reserve fund. that we now have to pay in October, and the voters approved financing it for the next 4 years. So, I mean, there's reasons we need that reserve fund. I think the situation we're in now is a good reason for why we need a reserve fund. This is the importance of that, but it was the detail that the voters were having a hard time understanding. And I'm not sure that the select board had a good understanding themselves. So we were tripping over ourselves explaining it, I think was part of our problem. Hence Ron is here.
So I'll hop in because I remember the last time I was here having this conversation. And as Julie just, said it to me, she caught me up, where we were the last time here. So here's what I would simply say. I endorse the policy. When Dave was here, I told him that that's the right thing to do. And apparently he talked to some of the neighbors, around here and VLCT, and they all endorse it. So it's good, prudent business to have that in the world of government. So let me leave no doubt about that. So, and then the way I understand it is they passed a concept at town meeting, but kind of deferred, really any action on the act itself until you kind of worked out the details, is that, I don't think that's changed, correct?
That's where we're at.
So a couple of things. There's some details outlined, as I said at the last meeting, under one of the statutes for reserve funds, so there's no need to go reinvent that wheel. Those details, when it's in that fund, are really spelled out in statute, okay? So let me first say, but that's not the problem. The problem is getting it into those funds, which is really what dictates the policy. And here's all I'll say. This needs some work, is what I would say on the details. And probably my advice to the town of Chester is let me work with Julie, and this is what I offered last time. Let me work with Julie. Let's take this. Let's do the before. Let's do the after. Let's pull some bells and whistles because I'm unsure of what it is that you're trying to say based on some of the conversations you had at town meeting. But here's what I'm sure of. I've written many of these. Write it for the town of Chester, Vermont, and make sure that it can stand the test of time, but I think in order to do that, you need to go back and take another stab, at this policy to get it into where the statute kicks in, and that's where I think all the details are. And if I'm a resident of Chester, that's what I would want you to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Ron and I will work together on creating a draft policy that we'll bring back to the board.
You send me an email, I'll send you the closest thing to 3 of them that we can make the town of Chester.
Okay. Yep.
It's something like this. Would that also be a part of the pool that we're able to take money out of instead of a tando?
Once it gets in, like I say, the devil's in the details. So like I say, once it gets into that reserve fund, that's directed and governed by that statute, the mechanics, you guys are the trustees of that fund, and you're supposed to spend it in that way. If you spend it in another way, bad juju happens, man. That's why I say we want to put a policy that's consistent, and we want to allow the voters to have the input on how it gets into that fund, and I think that's the details that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And then there's triggers, on how much should be in there and how much you should keep and things like that. Those are all part of the policy, which I don't see in here. So that's what I'll send Julie. But when it gets into that fund, the statute takes over, and you as the trustees take over of that money too. Provided it's being used within the intent of what the voters said to use it for.
So it would work whatever way we designate it, as long as it follows state statute.
So a couple of things. Follows the voters' wishes, which correspond to the state statute. They've already blessed the statute. I'm not sure what they understood what they were blessing, but that statute's pretty particular, and all I'm saying is let's structure the policy on what we can do in accordance to the statute, and let's put some other firewalls in there too.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah.
Any questions or concerns from any of the other board members regarding this topic?
I just think it's overdue.
This is Derek. I do have a question.
It's Derek.
Go ahead, Derek.
When you asked Ron the question of whether the money would go into the pool that serves the to-from accounts, I didn't catch the answer. Does it become part of the general pool of money that can be drawn from?
That was the question that I had regarding if you set up this type of a reserve fund,
Yep.
are we able to take out of it as opposed to using a
Yeah,
TAN note?
Provided the pool is whatever the intent of what that fund was set up, that's consistent with statute, yes.
It depends on, Derek, it sounds like it depends on what we put into the details of it.
Exactly.
And as long as it follows the state statute or it's allowed, then yes. Does that answer your question?
Oh, he's frozen.
Derek? Oh, you're breaking up and it seems like your
Okay.
computer might have froze because you haven't changed your expression in a while.
Oh, really?
Oh, there you are.
There you are.
Well, it's a very unpleasant expression. But thank you for the answer. I do understand.
All right, thanks, Derek. Any other questions or concerns from anybody? Ron, thanks a lot for the help on this, and
You guys all good with me?
I think I am.
Yep.
Yep.
I'll be
So we'll
talking
get
to you
back-
about some other
So we'll
things.
get back to you sometime and follow,
Yep.
and probably, you know, maybe what we can do is, you're probably gonna start working on your 2021 budget sometime. probably
I'm going to be
October.
calling you about
Yeah.
that because I'm going to do things a little different.
Yeah,
I got to
so-
get
so-
some
so-
advice.
So I would too, you know, and then we can talk about some of the other madness as it becomes clearer. But what we could probably do, if I'm, again, sitting in your chairs, maybe it would make sense to come in and kind of do a twofer, have this conversation. I think it gives you plenty of time, you know, to perfect a policy and the procedures on the policy. But I also think I would do it probably around October 1st, October 15th, so we can kind of
look at our
Look at the balance sheet.
finances.
plan if necessary. I would just do that.
Sure.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Ron.
Everybody take care.
Thanks for your
Thank
time.
you,
and,
thank you.
Safe travels. Go ahead, Lee.
She thinks
She
you're
just
on.
said thank you.
I think she just froze, too. No. Lee, if you can hear me, I'm not sure, you might have froze. Oh. I lost you now.
No, I didn't freeze.
There you are. Go ahead, Lee. It's all breaking up. You're definitely frozen now. Let me give it a few seconds, Lee. Maybe it'll calm down or...
I don't know what the-
As Glasgow.
I hear you. I'm sorry. Heather?
Oh, yeah, it's a very bad connection. And that's why I'm off video, because I'm trying to, hopefully that'll make it better, but it's not great.
Your voice, your audio's coming through. Lee, are you still there with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure, because on my end, the computer screen, yeah, you're coming through now. Yep.
Yeah, well, I was muted for most of it.
Oh,
But
that could explain it.
very broken up from everyone who's speaking inside the town hall. So that's where I'm kind of.
All right, thank you, Lee. Next, excuse me. Next item on our agenda is just some housekeeping, an entertainment permit, PJ's Country Kitchen. Classic rock and roll type of music with 2 to 4 players. It's at the Country Girl Diner, and they're looking for 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. on Thursday, July 17th, and Saturday, July 25th, Saturday, August 22nd, and Saturday, September 26th. So I imagine our police chief is aware of all this. You've gone through it. Everything seems fine.
Yep.
Everything's good.
Yep, no complaints.
Any questions, concerns?
No.
No? So we just sign this
Sign
away
back.
and it goes?
There you go.
Get a pen tonight.
Get your own pen.
Yeah.
You can just keep it. Nothing, yes, sir.
Okay?
I like your shades there, Sue.
Well said, Ernie.
All set? Next item is a liquor license for the Fullerton Inn.
So you have a first class, third class, and an outside consumption. And they're new owners now, or will be soon, new owners. So that's why we have brand-new permits. So on the outside consumption, you are just approving, Debbie will sign. So you need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion we approve, you said outside consumption?
Outside consumption for the Fullerton Inn.
For the Fullerton Inn, for the new owners?
Second.
Jeff's the motion. Lee's the second. It's tough to get in on the seconds on this, Lee. It's always a little delayed with the computer and the Zoom thing.
Well, at least there are 2 leagues, so you can.
I know, so that's why I left it vague on that one.
And then you have the first and third class liquor license, and you sign on that page.
Do we need a motion for that?
I would. I don't know that you
I would
need one,
entertain a
but-
motion to approve the second and third class license?
First and third.
First and third class license for the Fullerton Inn.
So moved.
Also move.
Lee Dakin's the motion.
She said, oh,
Lee Gustafson's the
I'll second
second.
okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
can I ask the board if they would ask Ms. Dick to recuse herself?
Oh,
Ask Lee Dakin to recuse herself.
On this application?
We had a request, Lee, that you recuse yourself from this vote?
All right, then.
Okay,
I will make the second then.
all right. Thank you, Bill.
I will make the second then. And Lee Gustafson can be the
Yep,
motion.
fine.
so Lee Gustafson, for
The
Amy's
motion.
benefit, is making the motion.
And Jeff's the second.
Yeah. For Amy's benefit, yeah. And Lee Dakin recused herself, Amy, in case you didn't get that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And Lee Dakin, Heather, you opposed?
No, she said aye.
Oh, okay. All right. No, it's me. Thank you. I almost liked it better when it was straight Zoom.
Just
It's
one
a-
signature on this?
Just one signature, yeah. It's hard when,
Okay, so I live in because it's been terrible, so on the side. Oh, I look minutes from the recording. Sat the TV is gonna send me their recording, it won't be the Zoom recording, it will be their recording.
Oh, that would be great. I would like to see it too, because I feel good for a while.
Just one to sign?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, guys.
they are.
Yep. I'm getting there. Next item on our agenda is signing of loan documents. Do we need motions on these?
You will need motions on these.
The first one is...
And Bill, Debbie is going to overnight those licenses tomorrow. Yep.
Have a good night.
Good night, Bill.
So you will need a motion for the note, Arnie.
Yeah.
You will need a motion for the resolution. And you will need a motion for the non-arbitrage certificate
On each one of them.
on each, right, on each loan. So take them one loan at a time, and here's the originals.
Yep. So the first one for the 110, is that the backhoe?
You want to do the 110?
Yes.
110 is the backhoe.
Julie,
Yeah.
do you want us to come in and sign these?
I've got 3 signatures, so it's up to you.
The 100 grand is the paving?
If you're coming in to sign
Is it?
the warrants, then you could sign these.
The dump truck is 140.
Okay.
Here's the backhoe.
So I need a motion to approve the Town of Chester capital equipment note for the tune of $110,000 for the purchase of a backhoe.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Lee Gustafson's the motion. Jeff's a second. Any further discussion on it? All those in favor of approving that note, please say aye.
Aye.
And should it be to authorize the chair to sign this one because it's just one signature?
Correct, on the non-arbitrage.
You want to amend your motion to authorize the chair to sign?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Okay. This is the real one, right?
That's,
I don't want to mess
it's
it
the
up.
colored fancy one, yep.
All right. So approve the note, and then we have to approve.
Not that page, the next page. The clerk signs that page.
Certificate of registration. We have to approve
Yeah.
the Town of Chester, the resolution.
The resolution, yeah.
I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution for our capital equipment borrowing to the tune of $110,000 for our backhoe,
So moved
and authorize the chair to sign.
and authorize chair to sign.
Jeff's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Lee's the second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Coming in late. It's good, though. Sorry. No, it's okay. And I would entertain a motion to have authorized the Select Board Chair to sign the Town of Chester non-arbitrage certificate regarding a capital equipment borrowing for the backhoe of $110,000.
So moved.
Second it.
Lee Gustafson's the motion. Jeff Holden's the second.
Ernie?
Yes.
I think this is for the,
What was that question, Lee?
No,
this is for 140,000.
Oh, this one's still 110. There's 3 different motions that have to be done on this.
Oh, I thought we've already done 100.
No, this is, oh, I'm sorry. What's the 110?
The 110 is the backhoe.
Backhoe. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, there's 3 different motions for each one of these, Lee. For the backhoe, for the paving, and for the dump truck.
Okay.
So there's a note, the arbitrage, and then the last thing there. I still forget it. All those in favor of approving the non-arbitrage certificate for the backhoe?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Got through one of them. I'm going to make it through the yellow ones. Okay. Next one on our list is the paving loan, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the Town of Chester capital improvement note for the sum of $110,000 for paving.
I think it's $100,000.
Oh, $100,000. Thank you, Lee, for paving, and authorize the chair to sign.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Lee Gustafson's the motion. Jeff Holden's the second. Any further discussion on this?
I just would comment that, you know, I'm doing this because I know the situation we're in, but borrowing money to pave is just kind of dragging stuff out. And I understand we have to at this point, but I hope in the future we can avoid this.
I agree with you. Sometimes it seems like we take loans out. For big-ticket items, somehow we have to get it in the budget, so we have that much every
Yeah,
year.
I understand, I know what happened.
Yep.
but So I
Yep.
just wanted to make a comment on that.
Any other discussion? I thought you were going to put your hand up, so. Steve? I think, Julie, you can help us out on this. It's private property.
Could you repeat that?
Steve Mancuso is here, and he was questioning about a permit that he had taken out, an entertainment permit for an event, a yearly event that he has in, this year it's in September, I believe. And he put the paperwork into the town, And the question became whether we have any jurisdiction over it or
Correct.
how that works.
So I am reviewing the town's entertainment policy, but it's my understanding that the select board can't issue an entertainment permit for a private residence to have a party. But what I am wanting to confirm, Steve, because I need to review that policy and see where their authorities are and are not, because if we don't have the authority, then obviously we can't do that. So it was my understanding that there was not a hurry for this, so it's on my desk to look at the policy and get back to you. Did I get the wrong understanding?
No, I
Okay, all right.
the noise ordinance in town,
Yeah.
probably would see it.
There is a noise ordinance in town for commercial entities, yes, that go along with conditional use permits.
Commercial entities include, air brakes, when people in town,
What the?
Is there a question, Jess?
I just know that in my neighborhood, if anybody starts a guitar or anything in my residential neighborhood, then the police are called and the music is shut down. So there must be a way.
After 10 o'clock.
I'm sorry?
After 10 o'clock, it's called noise in the nighttime if the noise is exceeding a certain level or it's annoying residents.
But that's a state policy.
Right, that's a
That's
state.
not a town of Chester policy,
Right.
yeah.
That's not a policy.
And I will say, a noise ordinance is something that the town needs to investigate whether or not it wants to go there. I have been hearing some complaints lately, again, about Jake brakes on trucks. So I've got some research going into that. What I'm already hearing so far is that in the state of Vermont, you can't limit Jake brakes.
No, because there's safety.
There is safety equipment on a truck, so we can't say they can't use them. But there's some stuff brewing with that. So a noise ordinance, I think, is probably something that is probably going to be looked at by the board at some point, just because all these little things kind of keep coming up. But the zoning noise applies to a conditional use permit. It does not apply to a single-family residence.
Right.
So, what you're trying to do is do it right and,
Right.
jump through the hoops or whatever, if there are, and we're not even sure what they are. You know?
Because there's not a town noise ordinance. That's,
So we played in other towns where we could shut down.
yeah. Do they have a municipal ordinance, a town ordinance?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to go to that town, you have to apply.
yeah.
You have to do this routine that I thought was active.
Right. If you were going to Country Girl Diner and were performing there and providing entertainment, then that establishment, Country Girl Diner, would need to come in and get an entertainment
Which is
permit, like
what-
you did.
what we just
Like
did.
you did tonight. But for you at your home, if I'm at my house and I'm throwing a graduation party for Mika and I'm bringing in a band to play, I don't need a permit from the town of Chester to do that.
Just need good neighbors.
You just need to invite your neighbors, correct? However, but what that means is, like, I can't just take the roof off the house, until 2 o'clock in the morning, because by statute, there are other noise ordinances in effect. Yeah.
As long as the beavers don't complain, you're all set.
Are all your neighbors invited? What day is it, Steve?
The 19th,
September. It's a Saturday? It is.
Good food.
Steve, I am going to review the entertainment policy because it's old and we haven't brought it out in a very long time. If I find something in there that is different, I will let you know.
I guess glad to serve as the problem child here. So, good luck, guys, and thank you very much.
Thanks,
So
Steve.
I'm going to, it's the Mancuso Palooza 2020. It's the Secret Musicians Other Ball.
Well, they're all starting.
Saturday, September 19th, noon till rain date, the Sunday the 20th, 322 Amson Hill Road. All right, Steve.
So I'll find out more about it, Steve, and we'll get back to you. Yeah. All right.
Oh, so we had a motion, and we got sidetracked there for a little bit.
So there's a motion and a second on the...
Yep.
On the pavement.
And there any further discussion? None. All those in favor of approving that motion, please say aye.
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 I could
Nope.
not hear the motion call.
I'm sorry, Lee?
This is now getting painful.
Yeah, I could not understand what the motion was, so I.
My feeling.
Reread the motion. She can't
The motion
understand.
was to approve the Town of Chester and capital improvement note for the sum of $100,000 designated for paving and to authorize the chair to sign it.
Thank you.
Okay, Lee.
I vote,
So I was calling for a vote, and everybody said yay. So, Lee, you're okay with it?
I'm totally okay with that.
All right. And the next motion I would entertain would be a Town of Chester resolution for capital improvement borrowing for the sum of $100,000 for paving and to authorize the chair to sign it.
So moved.
Second.
Lee's the motion, Jeff's the second. Any further discussion on it? Lee, did you hear that one?
I did, thank you, Ernie.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Nope. Motion passes. And the last one that's related to the same item is the Town of Chester non-arbitrage certificate for capital improvement borrowing for the sum of $100,000 for paving, and authorize the chair to sign it.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Lee Gustafson's the motion. Jeff Holden's the second. Any discussion on this? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, guys. Made it through two of them. One more? Thanks. The last item on the loan documents, I would entertain a motion to approve a Town of Chester capital equipment note for the sum of $140,000 to purchase a dump truck and to authorize the Select Board Chair to sign the document.
So moved.
Second.
Jeff Holden's the motion. Lee Gustafson's the second. Any discussion on this?
So does this include the black dump body instead of the painted blue one?
I believe this is black. I
Yes.
believe, yes.
Okay.
It's our
Yes.
new color.
Cheaper color.
For the body.
It wasn't as much of a savings, but it was still a
that's-
savings.
Any other further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. And the second item regarding the dump truck is I would entertain a motion to approve the Town of Chester resolution for a capital equipment borrowing for the sum of $140,000 for the purchase of a dump truck and to authorize the Select Board Chair to sign.
So moved.
Second.
Jeff Holden's the motion, Lee Gustafson's the second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And one more left. I would entertain a motion to approve the Town of Chester non-arbitrage certificate for capital equipment borrowing for the sum of $140,000 in regards to purchasing a dump truck, and to authorize the chair to sign.
So moved.
Second?
Jeff Holden's the motion. Lee Gustafson's the second. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Well, we got it down
opposed?
pat towards the end there, but we spent an awful lot of money doing it.
Well, all right. The next item is items for future agendas and/or new business. I know, Lee, you had a question regarding speed limits in town. I think that's going to be on a future.
Speed limit. Yep, speed limits will be on the August 5th. And then Jim Carroll will be here in person on August 19th to discuss the conflict of interest that board members were asking for.
And this is Heather.
Yep, go ahead.
I think we should try to get some policy review on the agenda.
For which policy?
Well, remember, we have quite a few that are quite old and outdated, and we're going to review them.
Yeah, we did have quite an extensive list, but maybe there's something in there that that needs attention sooner than later.
I will try very hard to do that. Hasn't exactly been the climate for.
Yep. No, that was an intention that we had a while ago, and we could definitely look into it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Well, I read a part of the police assessment, and it did say that some of those were quite old. So, you know, I think we need to see which we need to review. The other thing is, Julie, did you ever find out how often those assessments are? What's the typical time you have assessments every? Did you find out the standard practice?
Well, I talked to Jim Carroll about it because he was part of this process. And he had said, his indication to me was that most of the time, assessments like that are done when there's something driving it. So it's, in his understanding, it's not as standard like every 10 to 15 years you relook at it. His statement following that is all policies should be reviewed, period. Probably every 10 years would be a maximum.
Yeah,
So if you're going to look at all policies, police would be part of that. His was, you know, an 8 to 10 year range. So he didn't signal that or separate them out as a different time frame, just that it's part of other policies that should be reviewed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Heather, if I remember correctly, it was triggered by some events that were happening and some concerns, more so than just a policy update. So there was a little more to this one than usual, because usually, I forget what the expense was on it, but there was an expense associated with it. And usually when we go through policies or do any review of departments, it doesn't involve something like that we went through for this one. It's more initiated by our own.
And I just want to make sure that it wasn't routine, but in there it did say that some of the policies are old, and I don't know if they've been updated,
Yep.
but it reminded me that we've been trying to review policies for some time.
Yep.
And we just have a lot of stuff going, I understand.
The personnel policy will probably be the next one that will be up, but there's no reason to look at that until we figure out the benefit package piece. And that's that extensive research that I'm working on now. So when that is done and I bring that to you, the goal is September, we'll be looking at the personnel policy. We'll do the whole rewrite of the personnel policy at the same time.
Okay, well, Thank you.
Nope, it's on my
Heather-
list.
Heather, do you remember which parts were old in that assessment?
You know, Jeff, I just reviewed it, I didn't study it, but I can go back, I highlighted a few things.
Okay, because I know there have been several policies that have been updated
updated,
since
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I didn't know if we'd already covered that. That's,
Well,
that's,
if we were gonna do it, we were gonna look at whether, the recommendations were followed through. But it's a pretty hefty document, so
Yeah.
I did not study it.
Yeah.
yeah, they rewrote it 3 times. It cost us a bit of money.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And if I remember right, over the years following, most of the recommendations and the changes requested were enacted.
They were.
They were.
Things
everything-
did.
The requested changes were done within the year.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, so.
There was 1 or 2 things, maybe not, but most of it, the bulk of it seemed like it was acted upon and
Right.
things were taken care of.
Right.
Any other items for future agendas or new business? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Leaves the motion. Jeff's the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
All right, guys, we'll try to work out these computer glitches